Higgins, Moscow correspondent for the New York Times, reports on a new decision that has just been made about that embassy of ours in Moscow, a decision made by the U.S. State Department under Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. According to this new reporting, the U.S. State Department has just awarded a no-bid contract for security at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. It's a no-bid contract, $2.8 million contract, awarded without competition. That security contract has gone to, quote, a private Russian company that grew out of a security business co-founded by Vladimir Putin's former KGB boss, a veteran spy who spent 25 years planting agents in Western security services. Quote, security guards at the American Embassy in Moscow and at U.S. consulates in St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, and Vladivostok will be provided by Elite Security Holdings, a company closely linked to the former head of Soviet counterintelligence in the KGB. His name is Viktor Budanov. Viktor Budanov and Russian President Vladimir Putin worked closely together as KGB officers in East Germany. He has been vocally supportive of President Putin. Mr. Budanov helped start the firm, according to Russian sources quoted in the Times today. It's now run by his son, Dmitry. So, what could go wrong? The firm that will now be screening visitors to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and otherwise handling security matters at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow is a Russian firm linked not just to Russian intelligence, but specifically to Vladimir Putin's former colleague in the KGB who rose to run counterintelligence for the Soviet Union. And at this point in the story, I would usually make some joke about, hey, why not just hand them the keys? But literally, they're going to be running security at the embassy, so they are going to have the keys. Again, a no-bid contract awarded by the State Department under Rex Tillerson, first reported today in the New York Times. Why would you do that? President Trump returns from his longest overseas trip tonight. Even though it was a trip to Asia, he still managed to squeeze in 3 meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin on this trip. Despite the fact that the White House never confirmed in advance whether or not those meetings would happen, luckily for us, the Kremlin and Russian media was able to let us know that those meetings had happened as our soonest notification as Americans. After his meetings with Putin, President Trump found time to make extensive and uniformly supportive comments about Putin and Russia.
I believe that he feels that he and Russia did not meddle in the election. I believe that President Putin really feels, and he feels strongly, that he did not meddle in our election. What he believes is what he believes. And, people don't realize Russia's been very, very heavily sanctioned. They were sanctioned at a very high level, and that took place very recently. It's now time to get back to healing a world that is shattered and broken.
Really sounds like quintessential Trump, right? It's the kind of thing you hear from Trump every day. It's time to get back to healing the world. Isn't that the way our president typically talks? The great healer? You remember the art of the heal? Remember? The president's attitude toward the Russian Federation and Russian President Vladimir Putin is unlike his evident relationship with anybody else, let alone president of a country that is not just an active adversary, but a country that was aggressively involved in our domestic affairs last year, to the point where the previous administration kicked out tons of their diplomats, closed their diplomatic facilities in the United States, and made unprecedented declarations from the unified American intelligence community expressing alarm about what Putin and Russia had done. So in terms of what's going on there between our president and Putin, we still don't know. He behaves toward him the way he behaves toward no one else. In terms of the president's campaign, the investigations into the links between the Russian attack on our election and President Trump's campaign include now known contacts between the Trump campaign and a Russian lawyer and a Russian lobbyist and a Russian-linked academic and a Russian who said she's Putin's niece and a Russian military intelligence veteran and a Russian oligarch and Russian energy executives and also the Russian deputy prime minister and, of course, the Russian ambassador. Attorney General Jeff Sessions today upgraded his memory stick once again to declare to the House Judiciary Committee that despite his previous denials that he'd had any information about there being any Russian contacts by members of the Trump campaign, he now does recall he maybe had been aware about some of those contacts during the campaign.